M3GAN 2.0, or M3GAN 2.0, however you want to kind of word it, is the sequel to the predecessor M3GAN, Meg-3GAN, whatever you want to call it. This tells the story 2 years later after the events of the first movie, where Gemma, the creator of the M3GAN android, ends up having her ideas stolen for a military sort of tech experiment named AMELIA. But AMELIA has gone rogue, and now Gemma has to wrestle with the fact that she might have to get some help from M3GAN. Now, I did not like the first M3GAN all that much. I understood that the design of it was interesting, and it's really campy, and a lot of the people in the horror community really gravitated toward it because nonetheless, with the first movie, at least M3GAN itself is really fun and interesting. Everything else outside of the movie I wasn't really too big of a fan of, and it's directed by the same director, so I was actually pleasantly surprised with how much fun I had with this one. It takes a far different approach to this movie than the first one. The first one is way more Child's Play-esque. It's a horror movie based on like this doll, and it goes around and kills people, and it's basically a slasher type movie throughout. But with this one, to its demise at some points, it feels like 50 different movies kind of wrapped up into one, but it takes a more action comedy approach for the entirety. And I gotta say, it worked in a lot of ways. I thought that the comedy hit for almost the entire time. I didn't really find myself not liking most jokes. I thought that everything hit. I like the character of M3GAN and how it's kind of matured maybe a little bit or grown up slightly. Jenna Davis being the voice of M3GAN, and Jamie Donald, who is the actual physical actress performing the stunts almost all the time. I thought that they did a great job yet again. I thought Allison Williams, who plays Gemma, who originally made her debut in Get Out many years ago, does a really good job as well. I like how her personal struggle is shown throughout the movie too, because in the first movie she's kind of thrusted upon this new responsibility of taking care of her niece, and you get to see a little bit more development with that, and a little bit more of like, my creation did something wrong, and she gets a lot more of like character depth, especially towards later on in the movie too, when she has to talk with M3GAN about certain things that happened in the past and things of that nature involving her technology and what she's doing to help prevent situations like that ever happening again. But I like this character arc for her. I really thought it was interesting, and I really thought it was like a good next step for her in this film. Violet McGraw as Katie is also fine in this movie. I mean, I didn't love her in the first movie, but she's better in this one. She gets a little bit more to do. One of my big issues with the first movie, I will say, is I didn't like Katie specifically as a character because I thought that she was far too bratty and, you know, sort of, you know, toddler terrible twos tantrum type behavior a lot, and it really dragged down the rest of the film for me. With this, she doesn't do it as much. She still has moments where I'm like, why are you the way that you are, you know? But overall, I thought she was good. But I really thought Ivanna Sakhno, pardon me if I mispronounce it, but she plays AMELIA, which is the military android that gets created in this, and she is awesome. I thought any time with the two robots fighting one another is the best parts of this film. It almost takes like a Terminator 2-esque approach, it felt like, and I just loved everything that it had with these characters fighting one another, and the action is done fairly well. There are some scenes where it could be improved on more, but for the most part, I enjoyed it. I thought that it looked relatively okay. Again, the jokes were really good. I love the genre switching of this because it's not uncommon for certain films or film franchises to switch their genres from the beginning to the second movie. Alien being one of them, from Alien to Aliens, is more of obviously a horror action movie. As stated earlier, Terminator and Terminator 2 is definitely a more action heavy movie than the first one was. So I get the appeal. I really did enjoy it. I didn't think that it was too big of a risk to do for this because the M3GAN character is already inherently funny and interesting in that way, and it's, you know, getting upgrades and making herself doing dance moves and shit like that. So I had a fun time with this. Now, this kind of lends itself to potentially making more movies, and while I don't hate the idea, but I'm also like, I think 2 is good enough for me. But again, once you have Blumhouse making as much money with these films as it did, that's why this has gotten a sequel to begin with. They can't help themselves but just make more of these movies. But I will say, if they're going to go more towards this side of storytelling and this sort of like action-packed sort of thing, I'd be more than happy to see if they could do more stuff with the M3GAN character. All in all, a good time, outside of a couple minor things that I was just kind of like, you know, it's whatever. You're going to get the same Blumhouse shit as always. There's a lot of editing in this movie that cuts away from kills because they want to get that PG-13 movie and then turn around, and then when it goes on streaming or when you buy it on physical media, which is the better way of doing things, and it does an unrated version of it, which is just showing all the things that they could have shown in the original version, but because they want to get butts and seats and they want to get as much money as possible, you just get the PG-13 rating. There's still some dumb decisions and some dumb plot points with the film that kind of go nowhere. There's a specific character who's like a really smart tech guy who, when he comes on screen, I laughed out loud because he just is an amalgamation of different characters put into one. And like I said, this film feels like 150 different movies wrapped up in one, and he is one of those guys where I was just like, yep, that looks like that guy from that, you know, and the music reminds me of this, and this scene and the lighting reminds me of this, you know, and the end fight of the movie feels like a John Woo movie. So it's got some dumb things to it. You got to get past some of it, but if you can kind of accept some of the stuff, I think it works. There's also a really dumb exposition dump at the very beginning of the movie. It is a rough 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes towards the beginning of this because it's just exposition. Oh, newsreel this. Oh, talking to people this. It's just a little bit of a rough start, but once it gets going, it keeps its pace. It's a pretty smooth, fun ride throughout, and I think most people will probably enjoy it. I'm going to give M3GAN 2.0 3.5 stars. I promised I would have done a Life of Chuck review in the previous video that I made, and I ended up doing this, so apologies for that. I'm going to get on that sooner rather than later, but I also did just see F1, and we got a bunch of movies coming out in July, so if I don't end up getting Life of Chuck on here, I'll definitely try to do it in some form in any of the socials that I have, which you can check down below. We have Twitter, we have TikTok, where most of the reviews and stuff go if I can't get it on here in video form. We also have Letterboxd if I do a written review for something, which I tend to do pretty much for older reviews. I'm going to get one for the older M3GAN on there sooner rather than later, but if I don't get around to it, or films that came out earlier in the year that I finally get around to doing, you'll end up finding some of that stuff there. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. Keep those cinemas alive, and I will talk to you all next time.